Hey guys, tonight we're leaving behind medieval mud huts, plague-infested castles, and even the world of sleep-deprived assassins. Instead, we're taking a gentle nosedive into one of history's most energetic and, let's be honest, chaotic stories. The complete history of cocaine. That's right. Tonight's journey is one part soothing bedtime story, one part wild ride through the annals of medical mishaps, misguided optimism, and the kind of questionable decision-making that makes you wonder if anyone in history ever actually read the warning label. So before you drift into dreams of powdered noses and Victorian doctors with the self-control of a squirrel in a peanut factory, take a second to like this video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim those lights, turn on your favorite white noise. May I recommend Rain on Old Tin Roof or 19th Century Snake, Oil Salesman, ASMR, and settle into the pillow fort of your dreams. If you've got a fan, switch it on for that premium sleep ambiance. Let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered how something that started as a sacred leaf became the all-night fuel of Wall Street and 1980s discos? Why did Victorian doctors think cocaine was the answer to literally everything, from toothaches to shyness? Did Sigmund Freud really prescribe it to his friends? Or was he just trying to make the world's most chaotic coffee club? What exactly do you do when your medicine chest accidentally turns half the Western world into enthusiastic tap dancers with runny noses? And how did one humble plant from the Andes go from divine gift to DEA's most wanted in a matter of decades? Is it possible to sleep through an episode about cocaine? Or will you wake up halfway through convinced you invented the light bulb? Congratulations, you've just woken up in a Peruvian mountain village sometime, around 500 CE, and you're about to embark on a journey through medical journals, Victorian parlors, silent movie drugstores, roaring jazz clubs, and, eventually, a Miami beach that's less Baywatch and more CSI. Night shift, good luck. High in the jagged Andes, you're chewing a handful of coca leaves with your fellow villagers, blissfully unaware that you're the prequel to a global drug crisis. The leaf isn't a party favor here. It's divine, sacred, and essential, letting you haul stones uphill with the kind of cheerful stamina modern gym-goers would pay good money to fake. Let's talk about your daily routine. The sun hasn't even cleared the peaks, and already the air is thin enough to make your lungs question your life choices. But you don't reach for a double espresso. Instead, you pluck a few shiny green leaves, pop them into your mouth, and get chewing. Instantly, there's a pleasant tingle along your tongue, a soft numbing on your gums, and a gentle boost, not a high, not a crash, just the sturdy hum of energy that lets you think, yes, I will carry 50 pounds of rocks up that mountain today, and I'll whistle while I do it. Around you, the whole village is doing the same. It's not some secret party trick or a teenage rebellion. Chewing coca is as normal as bread at breakfast, or coffee at a staff meeting that should have been an email. Even Grandma gets in on the action, popping a wad of leaves in her cheek before her morning chores, shooting you a look that says, if you want to keep up, you'd better get chewing, rookie. But this isn't just about productivity. Coca is woven deep into your culture, your ceremonies, your understanding of life and death and everything in between. You offer leaves to the apis, the mountain spirits, before setting foot on the steepest trails, asking for safe passage, good weather, and maybe a little mercy from gravity. Births, deaths, marriages, planting, harvests, every important moment comes with a small pile of green leaves. Forget about wedding cake. You want a wedding coca leaf, preferably blessed by a grandmother with biceps like braided rope. The taste, earthy, grassy, just a little bitter, like licking the world's healthiest houseplant. It takes practice to chew without grimacing, But soon you're a pro. Your jaw works steadily, and you learn to pack the leaves against your gum, adding a dash of plant ash for a chemical kick. Think of it as the ancient Andean energy shot. The result: your lips tingle, your head clears, and you're suddenly full of opinions about llama herding and cloud shapes. Need to build a road across a mountain? Coca. Planning to walk 2 days to the nearest market with 100 pounds of potatoes strapped to your back? Coca. Trying to negotiate with your in-laws about whose turn it is to fix the roof. You guessed it, Coca. It's a tool, a comfort, a companion. Some say it even helps with hunger and cold. And honestly, when the temperature drops below freezing at sunset, you'll take whatever help you can get. There's no central heating, but there is a central leaf. The Spanish will show up in a few centuries and absolutely lose their minds. But right now, there's no guilt, no law, no shady deals in alleyways. The only crisis is if the harvest is bad, and someone has to explain to the village elders why the communal pouch is looking thin. You'd think history might remember this era as one of harmony and herbal ingenuity, but you're destined to become a misunderstood footnote in every after-school special. You don't care. Your teeth are tingling, your feet are light, and the Andes, impossibly vast and blue, stretch before you. As the sun rises higher and your chores pile up, you pass the leaf pouch to your neighbor and smile. This is your world, sacred, communal, and powered by the most famous plant nobody's worried about. Yet. And as you finally haul the last stone to the top of the ridge, you can't help but think, the rest of humanity might want to try this. Just, maybe, with a little more moderation than what's coming. As an Incan, you're not just chewing coca for fun. It's part of ceremonies, offerings, and the official Inca Don't Die of Altitude starter pack. Every ritual, trade, and even government bureaucracy has a little coca on the side. Because why not improve tax collection with a mild stimulant? Let's set the scene. The Inca Empire, the rooftop of civilization, a kingdom strung across mountains so high that even your thoughts need time to acclimate. You're awake before dawn, wrapped in a poncho that smells suspiciously like last week's llama. There's work to do, fields to tend, walls to build, temples to sweep, roads to carve out of sheer rock, and the only thing more certain than sunrise is that someone's about to pass you a wad of fresh coca leaves. In Incan society, coca isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. You, your neighbors, and even the tax collectors are stuffing leaves into their cheeks, working their jaws like determined guinea pigs. Need to climb 1,000 steps to the next village? Chew some coca. Got a festival to attend? There's a ceremonial mound of leaves in the middle of the square, right between the sacred corn beer and a flute band determined to play the same 3 notes all day. Even the priests are in on it, offering coca to the gods before a big ritual, tossing leaves into the fire and muttering prayers that basically translate to, "Please don't let the sun go out." Also, a good potato harvest would be nice. But it's not just about survival and spirituality. The Incas are logistical geniuses. Their empire runs on efficiency, discipline, and, let's be honest, a healthy boost from their favorite botanical pick-me-up. The legendary chasqui, those marathon messengers darting up and down the empire's roads, can cover distances that would make your fitness tracker spontaneously combust. Their secret? A sling of coca leaves at their side, and the knowledge that missing a delivery is a good way to meet the business end of a ceremonial stone. Even the bean counters, the quipu record keepers, are chewing away while untangling strings and tallying tribute. You think your accountant is focused? Try calculating the empire's potato inventory at 13,000 feet above sea level on nothing but quinoa and spiritual resolve. Coca gives just enough energy to keep the numbers straight, and, as a bonus, nobody's fallen asleep in a meeting since the dawn of the empire. If only modern office culture took notes. You'd expect all this stimulation to make everyone a little, well, excitable. But no. Incan bureaucracy is famously orderly. Taxes collected, storage houses are filled, roads are swept. People debate whose lineage is older over a shared gourd of coca tea, and sometimes, if the stars are right, even the llamas behave themselves. The only thing you're not doing, snorting it, because, for you, coca is a plant, a medicine, and a sacred tool, not a party trick. The spiritual side is impossible to ignore. Coca is offered to Inti, the sun god, at every major event. Marriages are blessed with leaves. Deaths are mourned with them. Births, planting seasons, and even the rare let's build a suspension bridge over that terrifying ravine project starts with a handful of green. Forget about gold. Coca is true Incan wealth. Travelers tuck bundles into their bags before venturing across the empire. And a well-timed gift of coca leaves can open more doors than a pocket full of silver ever could. Modern life has its coffee breaks. You have coca ceremonies. And let's be honest, the side effects are much better. No jitters. No awkward heart palpitations. Just the focused, calm determination to keep the empire running. The mountains may be high, the tasks endless, and the air thin. But the people? Unshakable, methodical, and ever so slightly buzzed on the BH and leaf of the Sunday. So the next time you're slogging through an endless to-do list, maybe pause and imagine yourself as an Incan administrator, high above the world, solving problems, herding llamas, and navigating imperial red tape, all with a leaf in your cheek, the sun on your face, and a sense of purpose that stretches all the way to the horizon. Because when the entire empire runs on coca, even the impossible starts to look like just another day at the office. The Spanish have arrived, and they're confused. At first, they try to ban the leaf, calling it devil's weed. By day 3, they realize their miners can't actually mine without it, and suddenly it's less banished and more taxed. Welcome to colonial economics, where hypocrisy is a business plan. Let's talk about your new job. Congratulations. You're a recently arrived Spanish overseer. Barely off the boat, still smelling faintly of mildew and self-righteousness. You glance at the local Andean workers, cheeks bulging with green leaves, and immediately decide this can't possibly be healthy or holy. Ban it, you declare after consulting with the local priest, who's still recovering from altitude sickness and a minor existential crisis. The official verdict? Coca is out. The devil's lettuce, you declare, has no place in the glorious empire of Spain. Except, plot twist, the ban doesn't last the week. Within days, you realize the harsh reality of running a silver mine at 13,000 feet. Your workforce, deprived of coca, transforms from sturdy laborers into a chorus of exhausted, altitude-sick zombies. The output of precious metals drops, the priests complain that no one can stay awake during Mass, and your dreams of retiring rich in Seville begin to evaporate. Meanwhile, the only ones getting anything done are the llamas, who, unfortunately, don't mind silver and are deeply uninterested in career advancement. So, you pivot. Hard. Ban? What ban? Suddenly, the church decides the plimes to a felve. Leaf is tolerable as long as the proper tithes are paid. The government, never one to miss a profit, invents a new tax category. Medicinal, not demonic. You set up official coca distribution. And, in the spirit of Spanish bureaucracy, now every bag of leaves comes stamped and signed by at least 3 officials with unnecessarily curly signatures. Welcome to the birth of regulated hypocrisy. But let's get personal. You, the overseer, might not chew coca yourself, publicly anyway, but you've become an expert in the art of looking the other way. Meanwhile, the local workers are back in business, stuffing their cheeks, working dawn to dusk in conditions that would make a modern HR manager faint. Each break in the mine is a mini ceremony. The leaf gets shared, prayers are whispered, and somehow the mountain feels just a little less cruel. Everyone's productivity soars, and for a brief moment, the only thing higher than the Andes is the colonial tax revenue. Of course, there's paperwork. Suddenly, every priest is a part-time coca accountant, tracking how many leaves go to which mine and how much tithe ends up in the parish coffers. You'd think salvation was measured in leaves per hour. Some priests even suggest the leaf helps the miners survive the sinful air of the mountain, though they conveniently forget last week's sermon about the fires of hell. Meanwhile, colonial officials draft elaborate reports back to Spain, carefully omitting any details that might imply the empire's economy now depends on a so-called devil weed. You have to love selective memory. Back in Madrid, the king is busy inventing new medals for bravery and paperwork. What you never quite grasp is the cultural divide. To the Spanish, coca is a commodity. To the Andean people, it's still sacred. A link to their ancestors, a tool for survival, a small act of rebellion. Each time a handful passes from palm to palm, the Spanish may control the mines and the market, but they never really own the leaf or its meaning. And yet, the irony is delicious. Your empire, so proud and pious, is quietly addicted to a plant you tried to stamp out. Each nugget of silver hauled out of the mountain, each gilded chalice on a cathedral altar, owes a little of its shine to a green leaf you almost banned. History is funny that way. One minute you're condemning, the next you're cashing in. So as you fill out your end-of-month reports, remember, hypocrisy isn't just a business model, it's the foundation of half of world history. And in the cool mountain shadows, miners keep chewing, priests keep counting, and the devil's weed is just another line item on the royal ledger. Imagine a European apothecary in the 1500s, filled with jars of things you should never put in your mouth. Coca arrives, and it's an exotic curiosity, lost somewhere between miracle tonic and what could possibly go wrong. Let's step inside. The air smells of dust, dried roots, and the vague hope that something on the shelves will finally cure your cousin's perpetual rash. There's a jar of leeches, a handful of mummified beetles, and a block of something labeled unicorn horn, probably. Into this aromatic cabinet of wonders comes a brand new entry, dried coca leaves, all the way from the New World, packed by someone who definitely didn't wash their hands. You, the local apothecary, have no idea what this stuff is supposed to do. The label says it's good for fatigue, melancholy, and perhaps fainting goats. The instructions are suspiciously vague. Chew liberally. Consult a priest if visions persist. But curiosity trumps caution, as it always does in early modern Europe. So you grind it, boil it, mash it, and even try to stuff it up your nose. Some customers claim their headaches vanish. Others report a peculiar tingling in the gums and the sudden urge to alphabetize their spice racks. Soon, coca is all the rage among a very specific crowd: adventurous doctors, experimental monks, and anyone with a taste for medical roulette. Spanish and Italian physicians, always eager to outdo each other, start writing treatises about the wondrous Peruvian leaf. They compare notes. Is it better than opium? Could it cure the king's persistent boredom? Would it make your hair grow back if you apply it with goose fat and a prayer? Of course, the side effects are glossed over. Nobody's quite sure if the leaf works because it's actually a medicine, or because nobody wants to admit they've been chewing a South American shrub in front of the bishop. Some swear coca helps them survive the damp English winters, though it's likely they're just grateful for something to take their minds off the smell of boiled cabbage. Still, coca's European debut is a slow burn. It's expensive, unfamiliar, and frankly, there are already a lot of options for things to chew when you're feeling glum. Quack doctors start selling coca tonic, a beverage so mysterious that the only guaranteed effect is that you'll be slightly less bored for the rest of the afternoon. One particularly ambitious merchant tries to market it as an aphrodisiac, while another claims it will restore the humors and possibly even prevent scurvy. Because why not? As the centuries roll on, coca settles into its role as a rare but fashionable fix. Wealthy nobles request it at dinner parties, if only so they can look mysterious while discussing their latest alchemical misadventures. Jesuit missionaries, caught between curiosity and guilt, slip coca into their travel bags, whispering prayers that the saints will overlook this little deviation from the dietary code. And somewhere in a candlelit corner, a barber surgeon wonders aloud if coca might be just the thing to keep his hands steady during the next amputation. By the 1700s, European scientists are hard at work analyzing coca with the latest cutting-edge technology, which mostly involves poking it, boiling it, and arguing about it in Latin. One enthusiastic Frenchman claims coca will help soldiers march all day without stopping, while another theorizes it might ward off ghosts. Nobody agrees on anything, but everyone agrees that this new leaf is definitely more interesting than leeches. The truth is, nobody in Europe really understands coca. Not the doctors, not the patients, and certainly not the apothecaries. But it's exotic, it's intriguing, and it smells just unfamiliar enough to be worth a try. Coca becomes the original superfood, a medieval health trend that predates kale by 400 years, and, thankfully, doesn't require a blender. So next time you wonder how a humble leaf could cross an ocean and survive 1,000 years of medical experimentation, remember, all it took was a room full of questionable jars, a little curiosity, and a total disregard for warning labels. In the grand European tradition, if it's weird, someone will try to eat it. Fast forward to the Panay. And forward, 19th century. You're a respectable Victorian with a respectable headache. Cocaine isn't just available, it's recommended. Your doctor is basically a pharmacist with a flair for drama and zero restraint. Let's set the mood. You're sitting in a grand, drafty London parlour, wrapped in 17 layers of fabric and trying to avoid dying of ennui before lunch. A slight headache creeps in, perhaps from the gas lights, or the neighbours' enthusiastic bagpipes, or the existential terror of the Industrial Revolution. Whatever the cause, you know exactly what to do. Send for the doctor. In walks your trusted physician, a man with the sideburns of a Shakespearean villain and a medical bag bursting with more glass vials than a laboratory accident. He asks what ails you, nods gravely, and then produces his latest miracle, a tincture containing the newest wonder of modern science, cocaine hydrochloride. You blink. He pours it into your tea. Drink up, he says. It's all the rage in Vienna. The science is simply electric. Welcome to Victorian medicine, where restraint is for the weak and nearly every ailment can be solved with something that tingles on the gums. Have a cough? Cocaine. Suffering from melancholy? Cocaine. Persistent shyness at dinner parties? Cocaine. You wonder what doctors did before they discovered this stuff. Answer: mostly leeches and laudanum. Honestly, this is a step up. You might think your doctor would show some caution, but moderation isn't fashionable yet. This is an era where you can buy cocaine lozenges at the corner shop, cocaine-infused wine from your neighborhood pharmacist, and, if you're feeling particularly adventurous, a tube of cocaine toothache drops for your teething toddler. It's the golden age of a little can't hurt. Before anyone asks what a lot might do, every home has its cabinet of elixirs, neatly arranged next to the healthful arsenic wafers and opium tonics. Cocaine is billed as the safe option. It's new, it's trendy, and, miracle of miracles, it seems to work. Suddenly your headache is gone, your mood is buoyant, and you're developing a suspicious enthusiasm for alphabetizing your sock drawer at 2 in the morning. Doctors, meanwhile, are falling over themselves to recommend it. Journals publish gushing reviews, restores vitality, dispels sadness, relieves asthma, catarrh, and the general drudgery of life. Freud himself is in love with the stuff, and he's writing letters to everyone about the wonders of his new favorite molecule. Cocaine becomes the secret ingredient in patent medicines, beauty products, and a particularly zippy brand of French wine that turns Parisian afternoons into a blur of excited conversation and questionable poetry. It isn't just a private indulgence, either. Society's elite host elixir parties, where the cocktails are laced with equal parts alcohol and pharmaceutical optimism. The result is a city full of people who look immaculate, talk incessantly, and haven't slept since Thursday. Children receive cocaine cough syrup and are pronounced much improved when they stop napping and start rearranging the furniture. Of course, there are skeptics. A few spoilsport physicians notice that patients are returning with new, mysterious complaints, jitteriness, nosebleeds, the inability to stop inventing new hobbies. But the majority are too enamored with the quick fixes to worry about side effects. What's a little nasal discomfort compared to the thrill of feeling like the King of England for 30 minutes at a time? Meanwhile, in the back alleys and opulent drawing rooms, the Victorian era's obsession with stimulation is quietly taking a toll. But for now, the age of wonder elixirs rolls on. If you have a problem, someone has a potion. If you don't have a problem, just wait. With enough medicine, you'll invent one. So here you are, a perfectly ordinary Victorian, swept up in a medical revolution where every bottle promises hope, vigor, and a better you. You raise your teacup in a toast to progress, blissfully unaware that history will someday look back and wonder how anyone survived an era where every solution came with a spoonful of scandal and a side order of side effects. It's 1884, and you're a doctor with a brand new bottle labeled cocaine hydrochloride. You prescribe it for coughs, nerves, and yes, hay fever. Side effects? Well, let's just say excessive cheerfulness isn't on the warning label yet. Let's put you in the shoes, probably leather, definitely squeaky, of a 19th century physician. You've got a desk cluttered with instruments that look more like medieval torture devices than medical tools. There's the ever-present whiff of antiseptic. Sometimes. Pipe tobacco. Always. And the vague aroma of optimism that comes with the latest pharmaceutical innovation. Cocaine. This little bottle is your ticket to the big leagues. The medical journals are raving about it. Your colleagues are trying it in everything from surgery to insomnia, and the rep from the pharmaceutical company just dropped off a crate with your name on it. It feels like Christmas, if Christmas was sponsored by the world's most enthusiastic chemist. Your patients shuffle in one by one. First, there's Mrs. Latham with her nervous exhaustion and a son who only speaks in riddles. A dash of cocaine in her tonic, and voila, she's suddenly far less anxious, considerably chattier, and showing a suspicious interest in learning the banjo. Next comes old Mr. Jenkins, who claims the hay fever is turning him into a dribbling invalid. No problem. You hand him a vial of nasal drops, assure him this is the future of medicine, and send him home with a bounce in his step and a twinkle in his eye that hasn't been seen since the Crimean War. The truth is, no one really knows what cocaine doesn't help. You've seen it numb a tooth so thoroughly that the patient tries to eat a sandwich while the dentist is still pulling out molars. You've watched it transform the shyest wallflower into the life of the garden party, and sometimes the main reason the punch bowl has to be refilled twice. In operating rooms, surgeons are thrilled. They can finally perform procedures without screaming, fainting, or, worse, the patient suddenly deciding to leave halfway through. Local anesthesia. It's a game changer. Cocaine is prescribed for everything: headaches, hysteria, indigestion, and the catch. All diagnosis of melancholy, which is basically 19th century code for sad and bored. Children are dosed with cocaine syrup for coughs. Adults take tablets for, well, just about anything. Got a twitch? Cocaine. Trouble sleeping? Oddly enough, some doctors even suggest a little before bed, assuming it'll help you relax. If it doesn't, at least you'll be too busy rearranging your furniture to worry about it. The pharmacies are in on it too. Brightly colored advertisements promise instant vitality and the cure for modern life. There are even friendly warnings in the local paper. Take only as directed by your physician, or, whenever you feel like a pick-me-up. It's hard to argue with results, at least, until the occasional patient comes back 3 weeks later, looking slightly haunted, muttering about racing thoughts, or sporting a nosebleed that won't quit. But for now, the world is enchanted. Freud's letters to his fiancée are full of rhapsodies about how this wonderful new substance has cured his ailments and inspired him to work all night. Your medical colleagues swap stories about miraculous recoveries, dramatic transformations, and the occasional patient who insists on hugging strangers in the waiting room. Everyone is happier, more productive, and, let's be honest, a little bit odd. Yet, the cracks are starting to show. There's talk in the back rooms about restlessness, about cases where patients simply can't stop talking, about sleepless nights and mysterious cravings. But in 1884, these are just details. Cocaine is progress in a bottle, a dazzling symbol of modern medicine's ability to fix anything. As long as you don't read the fine print, you set your little bottle back on the shelf, straightening it among a row of similar miracle cures. The world is moving fast, and you, the doctor, are riding the crest of scientific discovery. After all, what could possibly go wrong with a medicine that makes everyone so happy? Meet Sigmund Freud, who doesn't just use cocaine, he writes love letters to it. He prescribes it to friends, family, and anyone with a pulse. Psychoanalysis has never been so lively or so suspiciously upbeat. Let's picture the scene. Vienna, 1880s. You're wearing a suit, a nervous expression, and a mustache so serious it could pass for a doctoral thesis. You've heard about a young doctor named Sigmund Freud, a man with wild hair, big ideas, and a new favorite pastime: singing the praises of a certain little white powder. If cocaine were a person, Freud would be proposing marriage. Instead, he settles for publishing glowing scientific papers, writing giddy letters to colleagues, and sending helpful try-this-at-home samples to everyone he knows. If you'd invented the group text, Freud would be spamming it with cocaine emojis. But let's back up. Freud isn't famous yet. He's a young, ambitious neurologist, exhausted by endless medical shifts and haunted by the prospect of being ordinary. Then he tries cocaine. Cue the fireworks. "This is it," he exclaims. The answer to, well, just about everything. Freud starts self-experimenting, cheerfully noting in his journals the euphoria, the energy, and the sudden urge to lecture anyone who'll listen. He prescribes it for indigestion, depression, dental surgery, and a spectacularly disastrous attempt to cure a friend's morphine addiction by swapping it out for a cocaine habit. Let's just say that wasn't his Nobel moment. Now imagine you're part of Freud's inner circle, a group chat in the making. If only they had Wi-Fi and a decent group selfie. Everyone's getting free samples. Colleagues, girlfriends, skeptical in-laws. That guy from university who still owes Freud money. If you so much as sneeze, you're likely to get a hand-delivered envelope marked. Try this. It's invigorating. And since it's Freud, the note is 3 pages long and includes a detailed guide to dosage, possible feelings of invincibility, and poetic metaphors about mental sunshine. Imagine getting a DM from your doctor that just says, "Feeling sluggish? Sprinkle a little on your breakfast. Let me know if you invent calculus before noon." The effect on Freud's psychoanalytic practice? Electrifying. Suddenly, every case study is conducted at the speed of sound. Freud can stay up all night theorizing about dreams, Oedipus complexes, and why everyone in Vienna has mother issues. His energy is limitless, his optimism contagious, and his confidence in cocaine absolutely unshakable. Patients leave sessions feeling buoyant, their neuroses temporarily replaced by the urge to rearrange their sock drawers and call their mothers with updates. Freud, meanwhile, is writing letters, so many letters, to anyone who will listen, describing how cocaine banishes fatigue, restores joy, and might be the next great advance in medical history. The only thing he's not prescribing it for is modesty. Of course, even in Freud's caffeine-free fever dream, cracks begin to show. One friend, the ill-fated doctor, Ernst von Fleischl-Marxau, becomes the unwitting subject of the world's saddest double-blind trial. Addicted to morphine, he's handed cocaine as a cure. The result? A 2-for-1 addiction special, starring paranoia, hallucinations, and a tragic end that no amount of cheerful Freud letters could fix. But at the time, setbacks are dismissed as rare complications. Best, ignored while everyone celebrates the new dawn of modern medicine. As the months tick by, Freud's enthusiasm outpaces even his own mustache wax. There's talk of using cocaine in everything from headaches to hay fever, with Freud himself the loudest cheerleader. Even when the Vienna medical establishment raises a skeptical eyebrow, Freud is undeterred. Try it again, but with more feeling. If only his critics had a little more mental sunshine. But eventually, as is the case with most miracle cures, reality creeps in. Reports of overuse, dependence, and unfortunate side effects start stacking up. Freud, ever the optimist, quietly pivots to focusing on dreams and childhood trauma, 2 things, notably, not improved by a racing heart and a dry mouth. Cocaine slips out of the medical limelight, but its legend lives on in every slightly manic Freudian footnote. So next time you hear someone mention Freud, remember, the father of psychoanalysis was also the world's most excitable group, chat moderator, and for a while, the solution to every problem came in a powder, preferably with a handwritten note and an invitation to stay up all night talking about your feelings. Picture yourself as John Pemberton, Civil War vet, morphine addict, and enthusiastic pharmacist. You mix coca leaf extract with cola nut and invent the world's first soft drink divided by energy shot hybrid. The future of soda will never be the same. Let's set the scene. It's 1886. Atlanta is sticky with heat, and you're hunched over a bubbling cauldron of glassware that would make even a witch nervous. John Pemberton isn't just mixing up any old syrup. He's concocting his magnum opus, an elixir for the modern age. Fresh from the battlefield, wounded and hooked on painkillers, Pemberton is looking for something new, something dazzling, something that tastes a little like victory and a lot like, why does my mouth feel so awake? You stare at your lab bench. There's sugar. There's caffeine-packed cola nut. And, naturally, a hearty dash of coca leaf extract. This last ingredient is all the rage. Doctors love it, artists adore it, and your neighbor swears it'll help him finally beat that 2 p.m. slump. In go the secret oils, the flavorings, the acids, and a bit more sugar. Because nothing says health tonic quite like a gallon of syrup. Your first batch is a syrupy brown potion with a mysterious kick and a pleasant, numbing aftertaste. You take a cautious sip. Wow, that's brisk. You're alert. You're energized. You're already planning to alphabetize the entire pharmacy. There's just one problem. You need to get the word out. Enter the soda fountain, your era's version of the hipster coffee shop. For 5 cents, anyone can drop by and get a glass of your brain tonic, poured over fresh carbonated water and served with the promise that this drink cures headaches, exhaustion, nervous affections, and, if you're lucky, boredom. The early advertisements are a carnival of optimism. Coca-Cola is delicious, refreshing, exhilarating, invigorating, and, best of all, perfectly legal. Local doctors are quick to recommend it to patients for, well, pretty much everything. Can't sleep? Try Coca-Cola. Feeling too sleepy? Have another. Your regulars quickly become addicted, not that anyone uses that word yet. But let's be honest, this isn't just a soft drink, it's the 19th century answer to all of life's problems. Atlanta's elite sip it in the afternoons. Harried clerks gulp it down before tackling stacks of paperwork. And tired mothers swear it gives them the energy to keep both eyes open until sunset. Even children can get in on the action, because the only warning label is a cheerful sign. Drink Coca-Cola, business booms, soda fountains multiply. You, John Pemberton, are onto something bigger than morphine, and far less frowned upon, at least for now. The syrup starts selling by the barrel, and suddenly the city can't get enough. The only thing missing? A little mystery. You tinker with the recipe, shroud it in secrecy, and guard your 7X flavoring formula like it's a national treasure. Even your business partners aren't allowed to see the whole recipe at once. Is it because you're a marketing genius? Or just a little bit paranoid from all the stimulants? Hard to say. There's only one hiccup on the road to soft drink stardom. You, John Pemberton, aren't exactly a business tycoon. Before you can turn your wonder drink into an empire, you sell the formula, piece by piece, to a series of local businessmen, each more enthusiastic than the last. By the time Asa Candler gets his hands on it, Coca-Cola is well on its way to becoming a household name, a global brand, and the reason why American diners will forever smell faintly of syrup. The original formula quietly loses its special ingredient after the government starts asking questions about Coca's, shall we say, energizing properties. But by then, the legend is set. Coca-Cola outlives its creator, its narcotic kick, and its origins as a desperate experiment. What's left is the world's most famous drink, a marketing juggernaut, and a legacy that's equal parts refreshment, hype, and a reminder that sometimes a little chemical optimism goes a long way. So the next time you pop open an ice-cold Coke, raise your glass to Dr. Pemberton, a man who mixed up a miracle in a pharmacy and accidentally invented the fizzy backbone of the American dream. Welcome to the golden age of miracle cures. Cocaine is in everything. Lozenges, ointments, cough syrups. There's probably a children's version with a cartoon mascot. What could go wrong? It's the late 19th century and you, dear listener, are living in a time when medicine is less science and more enthusiastic guesswork with a splash of Victorian marketing. Your pharmacy isn't just a pharmacy. It's the Wild West of wellness. Every shelf groans with bottles in shades of green, amber, and clear, all promising to restore youth, vigor, and possibly make you taller. Labels scream in bold fonts, guaranteed to soothe all maladies. The world's only universal remedy. There's a product for every ailment you can imagine, and quite a few you can't. Let's say you wake up with a cough. No problem. The patent medicine aisle has you covered. You select a bottle of Dr. Dazzle's soothing syrup, whose secret ingredient is just enough cocaine to make you forget you were ever sick. The label features a jolly cartoon beaver with suspiciously large pupils. It's not just for grown-ups either. There's a children's formulation with a bear on the bottle. And if that doesn't scream responsible medical care, I don't know what does. But don't worry, these miracle cures have more to offer. Are you anxious, irritable, or a bit too melancholy after reading the newspaper? There's a lozenge for that. Suffering from a mysterious ache? Rub in some ointment. Can't sleep? Try Restful Night Tonic, guaranteed to help you drift off, assuming you can ignore the minor heart palpitations. Even your dog can get in on the action, because if there's anything dogs in 1890 needed, it was a little more pep in their step. The patent medicine industry is booming. Traveling salesmen sweep across the country in colorfully painted wagons, setting up impromptu stages in town squares. They wear top hats, wave canes, and deliver rousing speeches about the wonders of Dr. Miracle's coca compounds. No mention of clinical trials or pesky side effects. Just testimonials from satisfied customers who look suspiciously over-caffeinated. Behind the scenes, the formulators are mixing with reckless abandon. Cocaine goes into everything from woman's relief drops to revitalizing facial creams. If it has a label, it probably has a little something extra to keep you coming back. There's even a cola with a suspiciously familiar name promising a real nerve food, and yes, that's the early Coca-Cola, now available at your local soda fountain. Meanwhile, advertisements make wild promises. Cure asthma and anger, 1 spoonful a day, be the life of every party, chew Dr. Bliss's Coca gum. Magazines run full-page spreads featuring beaming children and robust grandmothers, all thanks to the wonders of the world's most energetic plant. No one seems to mind that their restorative sleep drops might actually result in an enthusiastic game of midnight charades. It's not just about the health claims, it's about hope, optimism, and the irresistible promise that, finally, someone has bottled the answer to all life's problems. The whole country is running on patent medicine, literally and figuratively. Productivity soars, people chat faster, and the world feels just a little more conquerable. Nobody asks too many questions, because nobody really wants to hear the answers. But beneath the dazzling labels and cheerful jingles, trouble is brewing. Reports start to trickle in: restlessness, insomnia, a mysterious new thing called dependency. Some folks just can't stop taking their medicinal lozenges. And there's an unspoken competition in town to see whose kids can recite the entire Declaration of Independence in under a minute. The medical establishment begins to grumble. A few doctors mutter about side effects, and suddenly the FDA is born, not to spoil the party, but to keep the worst of the snake oil at bay. For now, though, you're living in an age of limitless optimism and very limited regulation. The shelves are lined with promises, your cough is a distant memory, and you're not entirely sure if that cartoon beaver is waving at you or plotting world domination. In the world of patent medicines, every dose is a leap of faith. And, let's be honest, a pretty lively ride. As the 1900s dawn, you're at a fancy party, watching people discreetly powder their noses. Cocaine is sophisticated, the original party favor of the well-to-do, until someone's monocle flies off and they propose to a lamp. Welcome to the Gilded Age of high society, where elegance is measured by your ability to pronounce hors d'oeuvres and your knowledge of which silver spoon is for the oysters and which is for the well, cocaine. You're draped in silk or sporting a dinner jacket so stiff it could double as a shield. The chandelier sparkles, the orchestra is in full swing, and the conversation is a mix of opera gossip, investment tips, and breathless talk about the wonders of medicinal white powder from Peru. Your hostess floats past, balancing a tray of champagne and keeping a discreet eye on the powder room, no longer just for touching up lipstick. Everyone knows the real party happens in the anteroom, where the most fashionable guests take turns ducking behind velvet curtains for a quick refresh. Nobody talks openly, but the rituals are unmistakable. A golden snuff box passed, hand to hand, a porcelain spoon dipped with all the delicacy of a chemist performing alchemy. And if anyone's too obvious, there's always a fan to flutter, a cough to cover a giggle, or an enthusiastic debate about impressionism to distract from the fact that Lord Winthrop is now discussing stock market speculation with the potted ficus. For the upper crust, cocaine isn't a vice, it's a status symbol. Servants whisper that Lady Agatha has the purest powder in town, sourced directly from a discreet apothecary with the best connections. The men sneak away during billiards for a quick sniff for their nerves, while women, supposedly faint with the vapors, return from the powder room flushed and chattier than ever. Nothing says sophistication like an insatiable urge to rearrange the art collection at 2 a.m. or recite the entirety of Hamlet in a single breath. The scandals, naturally, are as well dressed as the guests. The papers love a good society story. A duchess caught sending coded telegrams to her supplier. A notorious bachelor found sleepwalking through the botanical gardens at dawn. Still in evening wear. Headlines whisper about society's new secret, while society pretends to be shocked, and then promptly orders another shipment. Even the marketing is upscale. Advertisements in glossy magazines feature statuesque models gazing dreamily into the middle distance, their complexions radiant and their eyes just a little too bright. For fatigue, for spirit, for inspiration, declares the copy. And if you look closely, you'll spot the subtle suggestion that greatness is only a pinch away. High society's poets, painters, and pianists sing the praises of this miracle powder, sometimes literally and at double speed. The line between medical and recreational is thin as lace. Society doctors write prescriptions for nervous exhaustion, melancholy, or the ever-popular female troubles. Nobody asks too many questions, least of all the family physician who's invited to every party and always seems to leave with a heavier bag than when he arrived. Of course, not everyone is so discreet. There's always the guest who overdoes it, who tells the same joke 6 times in a row, or tries to waltz with a marble bust. The social code is clear. As long as you don't knock over the crystal decanters or confess your love to a taxidermied owl, you'll be quietly ushered home and forgiven by breakfast. For a brief, sparkling era, cocaine is the toast of high society, a dazzling accessory, a conversational lubricant, a secret handshake among the elite. It's the little luxury that keeps everyone lively through endless banquets, masked balls, and the world's longest after-parties. Of course, underneath the sparkle and wit, a shadow grows. Rumors of trouble, of habit, of nerves start to circulate. But for now, nobody wants the music to end. The party goes on, and so do the scandals. History will eventually call it reckless. But tonight, as the orchestra plays on, it just feels like another perfect evening. One monocle, one powder room, and one ruined lamp at a time. A few doctors raise their hands. Maybe, they suggest, it's not ideal to prescribe this stuff for everything. They're promptly ignored, because who wants to listen to bad news when everyone's finally awake for breakfast? Let's slip into your well-polished shoes and take you to a medical conference around 1905. The room is thick with cigar smoke, self-congratulation, and the faint rustle of linen suits. Cocaine, the miracle drug, is still the star of the show. Most doctors are riding high, some literally on tales of astonishing recoveries, marveling at how much work they're getting done and gently ignoring the fact that their handwriting has become completely illegible. It's the perfect medical storm: unlimited optimism, zero regulation, and a cultural enthusiasm for shortcuts. But in the back row, there's always a troublemaker. A doctor stands up, clears his throat, and suggests maybe, just maybe, cocaine shouldn't be in every cough syrup, children's tonic, and ladies' monthly relief lozenge. The crowd bristles. Why would anyone spoil the fun? Patients are happy. Sales are booming, and the number of melancholic poets has never been lower. Besides, nobody likes a wet blanket at brunch. Even when complaints start to trickle in, nervousness, sleeplessness, the occasional impromptu attempt to paint the dining room ceiling at 3 a.m, they're easy to dismiss. People simply aren't using it right. Surely the solution is more careful dosing, not less dosing. And if someone does get a little too enthusiastic with their nerve tonic, well, that's a private matter between them and their now deeply suspicious house cat. You, the average patient, aren't really concerned. You trust your doctor, who trusts the advertisements, which trust absolutely nothing except their own bottom line. The world is waking up, sometimes several times a night, and nobody wants to go back to an era of leeches and cold compresses. Who's going to argue with results you can feel, when those results are an unshakable desire to alphabetize the pantry and start a conga line at Sunday dinner? Meanwhile, behind the scenes, a few medical journals are quietly running case reports. There's a whisper of dependency, tales of trembling hands, and stories of patients who can't sleep, can't eat, and can't stop telling their life story to strangers on the omnibus. One or two somber types write stern editorials, pointing out that prescribing cocaine for everything from sore throats to existential dread might not be the legacy anyone wants. They use words like addiction and overprescription, and you can almost hear the sound of monocles shattering. But society isn't ready to listen. The world is changing too fast. Electricity, telephones, motion pictures, and now this miraculous white powder. Progress feels unstoppable, and any suggestion to slow down is dismissed as old-fashioned. Besides, the pharmaceutical companies have discovered something wonderful. People will buy anything if you promise it's new, improved, and comes with a free sample. So the warnings are pushed aside, drowned out by the cheerful jingles of patent medicine, and everyone goes back to being productive, chatty, and ever so slightly manic. It's not just the doctors either. Journalists, advertisers, and even school teachers join in the optimism. One enterprising teacher recommends a drop of coca syrup for sluggish students, and soon the local spelling bee is recited at a pace that would make auctioneers weep. Families joke about Uncle Harold's pet pills, blissfully unaware that Harold hasn't blinked since last Tuesday. Yet, as the cracks grow wider, it gets harder to ignore the warning signs. A few high-profile cases, a tragic headline here, a public scandal there, start to chip away at the sugar-coated narrative. The government, always a little slow on the uptake, finally takes notice. Committees are formed. Regulations are proposed. Suddenly, those cautionary doctors don't look quite so paranoid. But for now, in these early years, the warnings are brushed aside. The party goes on, the prescriptions keep coming, and history inches closer to the inevitable hangover. Because when everyone's wide awake and having the time of their lives, who wants to be the one to turn out the lights? The public health crisis is unavoidable. You're a turn-of-the-century parent reading headlines about cocaine-crazed criminals. Suddenly, all those cheerful cough syrups seem a lot less adorable. Let's set the scene. It's 1910, and the world is no longer quite as wide-eyed about the wonders of white powders. You're pouring your morning coffee, flipping through the newspaper, when you spot a story, again, about a perfectly respectable citizen who lost their job, their home, and apparently their grip on reality, all thanks to a bottle of soothing elixir from the local druggist. The same bottle you use to keep in the medicine cabinet, right next to the castor oil and the licorice drops. Suddenly, the country is in a frenzy. Sensational headlines shriek about fiends, maniacs, and danger lurking in every bottle. Editorial cartoons show wild-eyed figures, hair sticking up like a haystack, chasing terrified dogs down Main Street. Politicians, always eager to solve a problem after it's become unsolvable, leap into action. Congress convenes panels, mayors form vigilance committees. Your neighbor down the street volunteers to lead the first ever neighborhood watch, which mostly involves staring suspiciously at anyone who sneezes too energetically. For the first time, people begin to wonder if maybe, just maybe, it's not a great idea to hand out cocaine-infused cough syrup to everyone from toddlers to schoolteachers. The cheery beaver on the label starts to look a little sinister, and the family doctor now hesitates before recommending the invigorating nerve tonic. The same advertisements that once promised restful nights and boundless energy are quietly withdrawn, replaced by stern public health notices and, occasionally, an apology. Occasionally, you, as a parent, are suddenly forced into the awkward position of examining the family medicine shelf with fresh, suspicious eyes. That bottle you've been giving the kids for their winter sniffles, you flip it over, scan the ingredients, and feel your eyebrows inching up toward your hairline. There it is, right next to sugar and wintergreen. Cocaine hydrochloride. You close the bottle, lock the cabinet, and have a deeply uncomfortable conversation with your pharmacist about alternative options that won't make your children memorize the phone book at 2 a.m. But the panic isn't just about health, it's about crime. Police reports of cocaine-crazed criminals fill the papers, and lurid stories spread like wildfire. Did you hear about the man who robbed a train station, or the woman who danced barefoot down Main Street, singing arias to passing dogs? Nobody's sure what's true, but everyone is sure it's cocaine's fault. Caution gives way to fear, and fear gives way to moral outrage. The government moves from suggestion to regulation. Laws are hurriedly drafted. The Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906, once mostly about mislabeled jam, suddenly gains teeth. Cocaine is quietly, and sometimes not so quietly, removed from over-the-counter medicines, sodas, and patent remedies. Doctors are required to record prescriptions. Drugstores begin to resemble miniature fortresses, their glass cabinets gleaming, their shelves reorganized to put all the good stuff behind lock and key. The public mood swings from euphoric optimism to tight-lipped suspicion. You find yourself in the pharmacy, glancing around to see who might be judging your purchases. Old advertisements become collectibles. The family cough syrup is now a scandalous relic. The phrase, "powder your nose," is suddenly less about refinement and more about criminal investigation. Meanwhile, pharmaceutical companies scramble to rebrand. New miracle cures are launched, minus the old kick, of course, and bottles are plastered with the words "safe," "non-addictive," in fonts large enough to read from across the street. The same newspapers that used to print cocaine coupons now run exposes about the dangers of drug fiends and the necessity of family vigilance. By now, you've thrown out the tonics, hidden the lozenges, and wondered aloud how anyone ever thought this was a good idea. The world has changed. Cocaine's reputation is no longer sparkling. It's dangerous, criminal, and best whispered about in the same breath as Prohibition and other moral panics. So, next time you hear about the good old days, remember, nostalgia has a short memory and a selective ingredient list. The crackdown has begun, and for the first time in decades, society is sobering up, and not a moment too soon. Picture yourself in a smoky jazz club, or maybe on a bustling city street in the 1920s, where cocaine is blamed for everything from dance marathons to mysterious disappearances of your neighbor's pet chicken. Let's set the scene. The Roaring Twenties. You're strutting down the sidewalk, dodging Model Ts and streetcar tracks, the air thick with excitement and the scent of questionable perfume. There's music spilling from every doorway. Jazz so lively it sounds like someone gave the trumpets coffee and told the piano it was late for a train. The world is modern, electric, and, according to every newspaper headline, absolutely terrified of cocaine. It's the age of Prohibition, which means liquor is technically banned but never harder to find. Just ask the nice man in the alley with the secret handshake and a suspiciously heavy violin case. But while police chase rum runners and raid speakeasies, a new menace captures the public imagination. Cocaine. The newspapers are on a roll, churning out stories faster than a Charleston dancer's feet. Every unexplained crime, every bout of public mischief, and every inexplicable late-night conga line is quickly attributed to the white scourge. Got a problem? It's probably cocaine. Jazz clubs become the epicenter of both innovation and anxiety. Inside, you find saxophonists with more stamina than common sense, dancers who look like they've replaced their blood with espresso, and crowds so energetic you suspect someone's been spiking the punch, if only with a dash of something stronger. The powder room earns its name for reasons only whispered about in polite company. Out on the dance floor, everyone's convinced they can tap dance until dawn. Occasionally, they actually do. But the panic isn't just about parties. Local crime reports balloon. If a string of pearls goes missing at the cabaret, cocaine is to blame. If someone is caught joyriding in a borrowed automobile, well, what else could make a person so reckless? Even the case of Mrs. Hargrove's missing chicken, last seen at 2 a.m., wearing what witnesses described as a jaunty feather boa, ends up in the crime column under the headline Cocaine Caper. Petty thefts, midnight brawls, and even long-winded poetry readings are all swept up in the rising tide of urban suspicion. Politicians seize the opportunity. Police chiefs warn of drug dens lurking just around the corner, usually in neighborhoods that voters already side-eye with suspicion. Headlines scream about dope fiends and jazz-mad criminals, and public figures demand new laws, more police, and, if possible, a return to the days when the worst thing your neighbor did was let their hedges get too tall. Social reformers, never ones to pass up a good crisis, hold lectures about the dangers of foreign substances and urge parents to keep an eye on their children, lest they fall under the spell of syncopated rhythms and energetic powders. Amid all this panic, the real problems get lost. The people actually struggling with addiction find doors slammed shut in their faces. Public health gets buried beneath a landslide of moral outrage and tabloid sensationalism. Doctors who once wrote prescriptions with a wink and a smile now pretend they've never even heard of cocaine. And the folks in the jazz clubs learn to keep their secrets as closely guarded as the band's encore. Meanwhile, the city hums with energy. Night after night, people dance, laugh, and chase the thrill of the new. Fear might be in the headlines, but hope is in the music. Cocaine becomes an urban legend, half fact, half cautionary tale, and almost entirely misunderstood. So next time you picture the roaring, reckless, rumor-driven city streets of the 1920s, Remember this. It wasn't just the champagne and the jazz that kept the world spinning. It was also the collective belief that if anything went missing, got broken, or ran away wearing feathers, cocaine was probably to blame. And if nothing else, that made for one heck of a story. Old Hollywood isn't just about glamour and silent films. It's about a little white powder in every dressing room. The parties are wild, the scandals wilder, and the morning after stories legendary. Let's drop you into Hollywood's golden age. The 1920s and 30s, when men wore tuxedos like armor and women floated around in clouds of silk and perfume, all under the relentless, humming gaze of studio lights. Every night, the city's most famous faces gather for what amounts to a cross between a costume ball and an Olympic sprint for attention. Movie sets are hectic, the schedule's grueling, and the stakes higher than any Art Deco balcony. Everyone's got to look perfect, sound perfect, and hit their marks while pretending they just woke up like this. Now imagine the pressures, the directors barking orders, the relentless paparazzi, the contracts that promise no sleep for the ambitious. Makeup artists try to hide the bags under your eyes with more powder than a small bakery, and agents hover at the edges of every conversation with a bottle of nerve tonic in one hand and a contract in the other. Energy is the name of the game. And suddenly, someone hands you a discreet little vial. You're told it'll help you get through those midnight takes, keep you perky for after parties, and guarantee you never yawn through a close-up again. And if you're feeling nervous before your big scene, well, there's a powder for that too. Cocaine in Hollywood is as much a fashion statement as a vice. There's a ritual to it, a mirrored tray, a monogrammed spoon, a powder compact that never actually holds blush. Just a pinch, darling, the ingenue whispers, for stamina. The most glamorous stars are said to sprinkle it on their cigarettes or stir it into their champagne. Everyone is quick to name-drop the pharmacist who delivers, discreetly, right to the studio gates. If you're in, you know who to ask. The parties, naturally, escalate. What started as a few drinks at the Brown Derby becomes an all-night affair at a hillside mansion, complete with jazz bands, impromptu swimming races, and declarations of undying love for people you'll forget by breakfast. The talk is quick, the laughter quicker, and nobody seems to blink between midnight and sunrise. A-list actors challenge each other to dance marathons. Producers bet fortunes on games of charades. And somebody always ends up in the koi pond. Whether or not they remember how they got there is another matter. Of course, the rumors swirl almost as fast as the powder. A scandalous headline here, a cryptic blind item there. Which leading man crashed a convertible through the gates of MGM after one too many late-night pick-me-ups? Which starlet was found serenading the studio guard at dawn? There are stories of scenes reshot because the actors can't stop giggling, or because one leading lady spends an entire take with her false eyelashes stuck to her forehead. For every movie made, there's at least one subplot that never makes it to the screen, usually involving a misplaced script, a missing co-star, or a mysterious case of collective insomnia. Yet, for a fleeting moment, it works. The energy, the bravado, the sheer belief in their own invincibility. Hollywood glows with a kind of reckless charm. Everyone's beautiful, everyone's busy, and nobody asks about tomorrow. Cocaine becomes part of the mythology. A footnote in the biographies of legends who burned too bright, too fast. If you can't keep up, there's always a fresh face in the wings, ready to step into the spotlight and inherit the powder compact. But behind the scenes, the toll mounts. Studios quietly cover up breakdowns, check stars into rest homes, and circulate memos about wellness. The silent era fades, talkies rise, and the culture of hush-hush dependency continues in darker corners. By the late 1930s, the magic wanes. More rules, more scrutiny. And suddenly that little white powder is less glamorous and more dangerous. It quietly vanishes from dressing rooms, replaced by coffee, cigarettes, and the universal human need for a good night's sleep. So next time you watch an old film and wonder how everyone moved so fast and smiled so wide, remember, Hollywood's golden glow was sometimes powered by more than just Klieg lights, for a while at least. Stardom came with a side of scandal, a sprinkle of mischief, and a little white secret behind every perfect close-up. It's the roaring 20s, and Harlem's nightlife is electric. Musicians improvise at breakneck speed, and everyone seems just a little too excited about the after-party snacks. Welcome to New York City, circa 1926. You're in Harlem, where the sidewalks buzz with possibility, and the evenings pulse with music so alive it practically dances out of the club and drags you back inside by the lapels. Step past the velvet ropes of the Cotton Club or the Savoy Ballroom, and the air practically sizzles with trumpet blasts, syncopated piano, and the smoky laughter of 1,000 partygoers who haven't seen sunrise in weeks. This is more than a party. It's a cultural revolution. Jazz is the soundtrack, and innovation is the mood. Musicians are the magicians of the night, spinning solos out of thin air, trading licks, outplaying and outdazzling each other with every new chorus. The rhythm section is relentless, the tempo impossibly fast. You could blame the high spirits on youth, on ambition, on the simple fact that nobody wants the music to stop. Or you could, like the local newspapers and neighborhood gossips, point out that there's a little more than just trumpet valves fueling these late-night jams. Cocaine, by this time, has settled into a different sort of notoriety. It isn't the open party favor it once was for the upper crust, but it hasn't quite disappeared either. Instead, it lingers in the corners, traded by the enterprising and sampled by the curious, giving musicians just enough edge to take a solo where no solo has gone before. It's whispered about in powder rooms, stashed away in coat pockets, and shared in back alleys with the same furtive camaraderie as a lucky rabbit's foot. The energy is infectious. You watch a saxophonist riff for 20 minutes straight, fingers flying, face beaded with sweat, barely glancing at the chart. The audience hollers for more. Dancers leap and twist, shoes scattering sawdust on the floor. Everybody seems to have one more song in them, one more step, one more hour before sunrise. The after-parties spill out of clubs and into apartments where the music never really stops and the snack trays look suspiciously picked over by people with the world's most ambitious appetites. Yet Harlem is more than just jazz and jittery nights. It's the epicenter of a renaissance, a blooming of black artistry, poetry, and thought. Zora Neale Hurston and Langston Hughes write about these nights, capturing the joy and pain, the hope and exhaustion. It's an era of dreams, and everyone wants in. There's pride in creation, in survival, in being part of something bigger than the daily grind. But there's also the gnawing edge of vice. As the party rolls on, shadows gather in the alleyways. Addiction begins to haunt the bright lights, and the stories about the risks start to spread. Cocaine, for all its glamour, leaves a mark. You start to notice the percussionist who misses a beat, the singer who slips out for fresh air and comes back too wired to find the melody. There's talk of chasing the high, of creative fires that burn out too quickly. For every jam session that goes down in legend, there's a cautionary tale whispered just a little too late for comfort. Still, the music thunders on. Even as reformers and police start to crack down, Harlem's nights are bright with possibility, fierce with invention, and yes, sometimes frantic with a little chemical encouragement. The jazz keeps swinging, the poets keep writing, and the world outside wonders what's in the water, or perhaps in the punch. So as the party swirls around you, take one last spin across the sawdust floor. Raise a glass to the genius and chaos of the Harlem Renaissance, the notes, the nights, and the stories that couldn't have happened anywhere else or at any other speed. Because in Harlem, even the after-party snacks are legendary, and the echoes of the jazz age still shimmer in the city air. With prohibition and police crackdowns, cocaine quietly slips into the shadows. For a while, it's less life of the party and more awkward family secret. Let's picture you in the late 1920s. The jazz is still swinging, but the mood is shifting. Prohibition is in full force. No legal booze, and certainly no room for openly flaunted narcotics. In a country that once treated cocaine like a miracle in a bottle, the public mood has gone cold turkey. What was once poured in soda fountains and doled out by dapper druggists is now whispered about behind closed doors, accompanied by the sort of shifty glances reserved for asking if anyone's seen your missing lawn flamingo. Suddenly, you're living in a world where the only thing more illegal than your neighbor's gin still is the little envelope tucked away in a locked drawer. The police are cracking down, the newspapers are running ever scarier stories about dope rings and urban decay, and nobody wants to be the next headline. Socialites who once passed a silver spoon at the dinner table now stick to demure conversation, nervously sipping ginger ale and pretending not to miss the old days when you could solve a headache with a pinch of something punchier. Pharmacies, once ground zero for the great American pick-me-up, have cleaned up their act. The men in white coats are suddenly very interested in your prescription, and the miracle tonics have been quietly replaced with new labels that promise natural healing and non-habit-forming relief. Your favorite lozenges? Gone, or at least suspiciously reformulated so that they taste like regret and chalk. If you're lucky enough to still know a guy who knows a guy, you keep it to yourself, and you definitely don't mention it at the family picnic. Meanwhile, medicine is going through an awkward puberty of its own. Doctors who once prescribed cocaine for everything from toothaches to wandering womb are now reconsidering their life choices and quietly editing their resumes. New advances in chemistry, psychiatry, and public health are shifting focus to treatments that don't require hiding the evidence in your sock drawer. There's a general sense of embarrassment, like realizing you've been enthusiastically recommending leeches for a decade only to discover, surprise, they're not actually that great for your health. But cocaine doesn't disappear. Like that embarrassing childhood nickname, it lingers. For the desperate, the addicted, and the simply unlucky, it's still out there if you know where to look. In some big cities, it slips into the nightclubs and the back rooms, but gone are the days of open enthusiasm and clever advertising mascots. Now it's just another secret, exchanged in the shadows, accompanied by the ever-present fear of a knock at the door or a stern word from someone's uncle in law enforcement. Culturally, too, the party's over. Movies and magazines that once winked at the little white powder now cast it as a villain. Cautionary tales make for good pulp fiction, and every scandal is splashed across the front page as a warning. If a celebrity gets caught, the fallout is swift and unforgiving. The nation that once flirted with cocaine now wants nothing to do with it, at least not in public. Of course, prohibition itself is a mess. The more authorities try to clamp down, the more creative people become. Speakeasies, secret societies, and bootleggers' dens are the stuff of legend, and, as always, a little bit of danger only adds to the allure. For every bottle of bathtub gin, there's a whispered rumor about something even stronger stashed in the back room. The old spirit of rebellion is still alive, just operating at a lower volume. So here you are, caught between wars, between eras, between temptation and reform. Cocaine isn't gone, but it's definitely out of style, at least until the next time history gets restless and someone rediscovers an old bottle in the attic. For now, it's back to decaf, a good night's sleep, and pretending you don't remember how wild things used to be. Because sometimes, the real hangover is just realizing that the party moved on without you. Suddenly, you're in bell-bottoms, the music is thumping, and everyone is convinced they're about to invent the next big thing. Cocaine is back, and this time, it's sparkly. Welcome to the 1970s, where subtlety goes to die, and the nightlife is loud enough to register on the Richter scale. You step into Studio 54, and it's not so much a nightclub as a sensory overload. Strobe lights, velvet ropes, a bouncer with biceps bigger than your first apartment, and a crowd so glamorous and unpredictable you wouldn't be surprised if someone roller skated past on a bedazzled ostrich. You're dressed in your finest. Polyester shirt unbuttoned to your navel, gold chain gleaming, and shoes that guarantee both style and blisters. Inside, the air shimmers with anticipation and maybe a touch of dry ice. Donna Summer's voice pulses through the floor, and everyone is moving, posing, or pretending to invent breakdancing. This is an era obsessed with reinvention and speed. What was taboo in your parents' day is now not only tolerated but expected. You're handed a drink in one hand, a business card in the other, and if you look interested, or just accidentally make eye contact, a discreet invitation for something a little stronger. Cocaine isn't just a drug here. It's part of the fashion. It's chopped on mirrored trays, handed out in gold-plated spoons, and even dusted with edible glitter if you're feeling particularly fabulous. In the VIP room, deals are made, gossip is traded, and the line to the bathroom looks like the start of a 5K marathon. Everyone has a theory. It helps you stay thin. It keeps you dancing till sunrise. It's like coffee, but for people who don't have to get up for work. Forget about subtlety. Discretion is out, flamboyance is in, and moderation is left shivering in the coat check. As the night ramps up, the energy becomes contagious. People claim they've never been more creative, more social, or more certain that their latest business idea, disco sushi, anyone, will make them millions. Record executives rub shoulders with models, movie stars, and whoever managed to sneak in through the kitchen. You overhear three people in a heated debate about the best lighting for a bathroom selfie, and you're pretty sure one of them is a congressman. It's not just Studio 54. Cocaine's comeback is everywhere. From Hollywood sets to Wall Street offices, from magazine launch parties to the back seats of limousines, everyone's either tried it, wants to try it, or knows someone who's building a tiny empire on the side. The media doesn't just report on the trend, they glamorize it. Splashing photos of celebrities with suspiciously energetic grins and endless stamina. Lifestyle magazines run features on party etiquette, and somehow, cocaine always makes the guest list. But the glitter has a dark side. Behind the scenes, you notice people who can't stop talking, ever. Friends who look a little too gaunt. Partygoers whose enthusiasm sours into paranoia by 3 a.m. And DJs who seem convinced the Bee Gees are speaking to them personally through the speakers. The club bathrooms get busier, the nights get longer, and the next morning, the city is littered with both confetti and regrets. Eventually, society starts to sober up. The tabloids run horror stories about overdoses and ruined careers. High-profile arrests become front-page news, and health officials, previously too busy disco dancing, sound the alarm. The warnings are out. But for a while, the party just gets louder. Because in the world of disco, the only thing scarier than coming down is being left out. So here you are, living large, sparkling under the disco ball, and riding the most stylish second act in cocaine's long, strange trip. For a brief, unforgettable moment, you feel like you'll never need to sleep again. But as the decade fades and the lights finally come up, you realize that even the shiniest party can't last forever, especially when the glitter starts to settle. Fast forward to the 1980s. You're on Wall Street, staring at a pile of paperwork, a calculator, and apparently an entire snowdrift of illicit motivation. Productivity soars, judgment plummets. Welcome to the era of power suits, suspenders, and hair gel, applied with the same reckless abandon as investment capital. You're standing in a glass and steel skyscraper, the twin heartbeats of Manhattan thundering beneath your feet. Money and adrenaline. Phones are ringing, ticker tapes are spewing, and somewhere in the blur, a young man named Gordon Gekko is about to become a household name. Greed, you're told, is good. Sleep, on the other hand, is for the weak and the unemployed. Here, the American dream has traded its white picket fence for a penthouse view and an answering machine that never stops blinking. Your co-workers are yuppies, young urban professionals, armed with MBAs, pagers, and a burning need to outperform, outlast, and outcaffeinate everyone in the office. But coffee isn't enough. Enter cocaine, the unofficial mascot of the bull market. It starts innocently enough. A little boost before a big deal. A quick bump in the bathroom before the opening bell. Suddenly, it's everywhere. In the bathrooms, in the boardrooms, on the backs of business cards with the sort of discretion that would make a spy proud. The entire floor hums with a frenetic energy, as if every stockbroker just mainlined a triple espresso and decided to explain their investment strategy to the cleaning staff. Need to power through those prospectuses? Cocaine. Got to pitch a deal in 5 minutes? Cocaine. Have to fake enthusiasm for a merger that will cost 10,000 jobs? Definitely cocaine. You feel invincible, as if you could single-handedly rescue the S&P 500 with nothing but a sharp tie and a questionable expense report. The days blur together. Work, party, rinse, repeat. Nights are just a suggestion. Of course, the trading floor isn't the only place feeling the buzz. The city's hottest nightclubs double as after-hours meeting rooms, where brokers close deals over cocktails and bathroom stalls. Everyone knows a guy who knows a guy. And networking events sometimes look suspiciously like group exercise classes. If everyone in the class was training for the who can talk the fastest Olympics. Meanwhile, productivity metrics shoot sky high. The quarterly reports are glowing, but so are most people's nostrils. You're on a winning streak, high on profit and the absolute certainty that you're a business genius. You laugh at cautionary tales, that's for amateurs. If anyone on the trading floor gets worried, they're quickly drowned out by the clatter of keys, the shouts of buy, and the relentless pressure to stay ahead of the next guy. But then, cracks appear in the glass tower. Maybe you notice a coworker who doesn't show up one Monday, just vanished, leaving only rumors and an unpaid lunch tab. Maybe the pressure mounts, and suddenly, someone's making wild bets with other people's pensions. Or you watch a new hire rocket to the top of the sales board, only to flame out in a cloud of anxiety and incoherent rants about pork belly futures. Behind the scenes, management starts whispering about wellness, and HR quietly adds pamphlets on addiction to the break room, right next to the motivational posters about teamwork. Journalists pick up the scent, and soon, exposés about the Wall Street drug problem fill the airwaves. The suits get a little less sharp. The party slows, then stumbles. Still, for a brief, glittering period, Wall Street feels like it's on top of the world, fueled by ambition, adrenaline, and more than a little pharmaceutical help. When the crash comes, it's epic. The American dream staggers but doesn't quite die. It just goes looking for a new buzz, a new hope, and, maybe, a way to finally get a good night's sleep. Because at the end of the day, even the brightest star on the trading floor needs to come down, preferably gently, and preferably with their savings, dignity, and septum still intact. The party is over. You wake up in the middle of the 1980s, and cocaine's new form, crack, has arrived. Communities are devastated, and suddenly, everyone's looking for someone to blame. Let's set the stage. The neon haze of disco has faded. Wall Street's cocaine-fueled confidence is teetering. And you're living in a city where the mood has changed from wild optimism to uneasy dread. Crack is everywhere. Cheaper, smokable, terrifyingly addictive. It spreads with a speed and ferocity that nobody, not even the most creative headline writer, could exaggerate. You turn on the news, and it's the same story every night. Police lights flashing, boarded-up houses, families torn apart, and a deep, constant anxiety thrumming just beneath the surface of daily life. You might remember the early days, when cocaine was still considered the champagne of drugs. Expensive, exclusive, almost elegant in its own self-destructive way. Crack changes everything. Suddenly, a high that was once the secret handshake of the elite is sold in $5 hits on street corners. It's no longer the drug of Hollywood, nightclubs, or high-rise offices. It's on your block. It's in your neighborhood, and nobody, from City Hall to the local news, seems ready for the consequences. Everywhere you look, the evidence is unavoidable. Crime rates spike. Hospitals fill with overdoses. The media is relentless, splashing images of glass vials and handcuffs across every front page. Politicians hold press conferences where they promise crackdowns, pun intended, while communities rally to protect their children, their homes, and any sense of normalcy they have left. You see the fear in people's eyes. Parents walk their kids to school in pairs, clutching hands a little tighter. Businesses install new locks, more bars, brighter lights. School assemblies are suddenly about stranger danger and just say no. At church, prayer lists fill with names of people lost or missing, and there's always a rumor that the epidemic is creeping closer. The music changes too. Hip-hop and rap rise from the chaos, telling stories no one else will. And the city's heartbeat shifts from disco's sparkle to the steady, unflinching thump of reality. What makes it worse is the way the world seems to turn its back. Instead of compassion or help, there's blame. Everyone wants a culprit. Is it the dealers, the users, the government, the system? The news gives you easy villains. But life on the ground is much more complicated. You watch as entire neighborhoods are written off. Whole generations marked as lost. The lines at the unemployment office grow, and the hope of rebuilding fades as quickly as the headlines change. The justice system's response is swift and devastating. Suddenly, minor drug charges become major life sentences. The police are everywhere, but trust is nowhere. Families see sons and "H-B," daughters swept up in raids, locked away for decades. The war on drugs is declared, and it's a war with casualties measured not just in overdoses, but in broken homes and futures lost. Meanwhile, the difference in how powder, cocaine, and crack are punished is so stark that it's almost its own scandal. A truth most people whisper about, but nobody in power seems eager to fix. Through it all, the crack epidemic becomes more than a health crisis. It's a symbol of inequality, of fear, of policies that punish instead of help. The party is long over, and what's left is the cleanup. Churches and non-profits struggle to fill the gap. Neighbors look out for each other, and the stories keep coming. Recovery, relapse, resilience, despair. So you do what you can. You vote, you organize, you hope. And you remember, a decade ago, cocaine was glamorous. Now, it's a public enemy. History turns on a dime, and you never quite know what's waiting on the other side of the high. The lesson lingers. Every party has a hangover, but the pain isn't always shared equally. Turn on the TV, and it's wall-to-wall coverage. Politicians clutch pearls, talk show hosts gasp, and the war on drugs ramps up with all the subtlety of a marching band in your living room at 3 a.m. Welcome to the late 1980s, where every living room seems to have the TV permanently stuck on breaking news. You grab the remote, but it doesn't matter. Every channel is in crisis mode. One anchor is talking about crack babies as if they're about to invade the suburbs. Another is dramatically holding up a vial of white powder for the camera like it's a medieval curse. The words epidemic, scourge, and urban blight are repeated so many times you start to wonder if they're part of the weather forecast. If you have kids, they're getting the message at school too. Assembly halls fill with wide-eyed children listening to someone in a windbreaker warn them about peer pressure, gateway, drugs, and the dangers of anyone who looks even slightly cool. Just say no is suddenly the national motto. And you can't even eat breakfast without Nancy Reagan popping up to remind you that the only high you should be chasing is self-esteem. Meanwhile, politicians outdo each other with speeches so stern you half expect them to break into song about law and order. There are calls for more funding, harsher sentences, and new enforcement task forces, with acronyms so long they sound like a secret government code. Crime rates are recited like bedtime stories. And the message is clear. Drugs are everywhere. And unless drastic action is taken, your goldfish will be next. In the world of talk shows, the volume is even higher. Studio audiences gasp on cue while experts explain how you can spot a drug house in your neighborhood. Look for lights on after 9 p.m. and anyone wearing sunglasses indoors. Urban legends spread faster than facts. People whisper about candy laced with cocaine and teenagers being lured into a life of crime by glamorous street dealers who apparently hang out near every mall food court. Of course, the news coverage rarely offers context. There's no deep dive into poverty, no discussion of why some communities are hit harder than others, and certainly no interviews with anyone actually using drugs unless it's for a scary, grainy close-up. Everything is urgent, dire, and, if you squint, a little bit theatrical. It's not just the evening news. It's the era's must-see disaster movie. Meanwhile, in the real world, the panic translates to real consequences. Police budgets balloon overnight. SWAT teams become a common sight in neighborhoods that were already struggling. The number of people sent to prison skyrockets, and for the first time, you notice just how many of them come from the same places, look the same, or share the same zip code. Racial disparities widen, but the cameras keep rolling. Nobody wants to break the narrative. Even the language gets an overhaul. Suddenly, addiction is evil. Dealers are predators. And anyone suggesting treatment instead of punishment is labeled soft on crime. Politicians pose with seized evidence. Mayors take sledgehammers to piles of confiscated goods in front of cheering crowds. The message is clear. America is tough on drugs. The solution? More jail cells, longer sentences, and a heavy dose of righteous indignation. For those living in the neighborhoods at the center of this storm, the experience is surreal. You look out your window and see news vans and police cruisers. But little actual help. Community leaders organize. Churches open their doors. And families do their best to protect their kids, all while navigating the minefield of suspicion, stigma, and new laws that seem designed to catch the desperate, not the dangerous. So you turn down the volume, pour another cup of coffee, and watch as the parade of moral outrage marches across the screen. In the end, you realize it's easier to make noise about a crisis than to solve it. And history will remember the 1980s less for its solutions and more for the headlines, the outrage, and the endless, blaring theme music of the war on drugs. Step inside the criminal justice system, where new laws are as harsh as they are uneven. Crack and powder cocaine get wildly different treatment. And suddenly, history looks a lot less glamorous and a lot more unfair. Welcome to the late 1980s and early 90s, when America's Get Tough era is in full swing and the fine print of justice is written in permanent marker. You've seen the news. Panicked headlines, stern politicians, and talk shows whipping up anxiety like egg whites. Now you're about to discover that the courtroom is just as dramatic, but with higher stakes and worse snacks. Let's say you're sitting in the gallery, watching as defendants file in, often in handcuffs, always with fear in their eyes. There's no shortage of cases, possession, distribution, intent to sell. If it's cocaine, you'd think justice would be blind. But she's actually got a magnifying glass, and she's using it to read the labels crack and powder. Turns out, these two cousins of the same plant are treated as if one is a prank call and the other is a felony. Here's the ugly math. Possess 5 grams of crack cocaine, and you face the same mandatory minimum sentence as someone caught with 500 grams of powder cocaine. If you're thinking that's not a typo, congratulations. You've spotted one of the great legal sleights of hand in modern history. It's not just about the chemical structure, it's about who's getting caught and where. Crack is cheaper, sold in smaller quantities, and most common in poor, urban black communities. Powder, on the other hand, stays in the hands of the wealthier, the whiter, and the better lawyered. Judges frown, and prosecutors nod as sentences are handed down. The jails fill up almost overnight. Neighborhoods already struggling under the weight of addiction, unemployment, and underfunded schools suddenly see wave after wave of young men and women disappear into the penal system. Generations are interrupted, families splintered, and the stigma spreads wider than the crack epidemic itself. For a moment, the politicians are triumphant. Zero tolerance sounds good in a soundbite, and nobody wants to be accused of being soft on crime. The solution, it seems, is to double down. 3 strikes laws pop up. Sentencing guidelines grow stricter, and soon even small-time users face years behind bars. The country locks up more people per capita than any other place on earth. There's an unspoken rule. If you're poor and unlucky, justice is swift and merciless. If you're rich, well, there's always a program, a plea deal, or a quiet rehab in the countryside. Meanwhile, the public is slowly waking up to the consequences. Investigative journalists dig through sentencing statistics, civil rights groups raise the alarm, and a few brave voices on Capitol Hill start to question the logic of a war that seems more interested in numbers than in fairness. Stories emerge of lives ruined not by drugs, but by the system designed to save them. Children grow up visiting their parents behind glass. Neighborhoods adjust to a new normal of absence and anxiety. Even the courts can't ignore the evidence forever. By the late 2000s, changes trickle in, slow, reluctant, but real. Sentencing disparities are narrowed. Some sentences are reduced retroactively, and the phrase mass incarceration enters the mainstream. But the scars remain. For every step toward justice, there's a generation asking why it took so long. So, as you step back from the courtroom and return to the world outside, remember, the law isn't just about order, it's about power, about who gets the benefit of the doubt and who doesn't. And in the story of cocaine, the greatest injustice wasn't just chemical, it was written into the law, stamped in court records, and lived out in homes across the country. History, for all its drama, doesn't always have a happy ending, but it does eventually get the receipts. It's not just a Western story anymore. You're in Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia, tracing a trail of coca leaves, kingpins, and the kind of economic incentives that make smuggling look like a reasonable career choice. Let's transport you to the jungles of South America, where the climate is so humid that even your shadow sweats, and the air buzzes with a mix of birdsong and the distant rumble of engines. Here, coca is not just a plant, it's an economy, a tradition, and, depending on which side of the law you're on, either a blessing or a curse. Villagers in Peru and Bolivia have been chewing coca leaves for centuries, long before it ever became a party trick in Paris or a disaster in New York. For them, it's a way to work longer, climb higher, and survive harder. The plant is so woven into daily life that you can buy a handful at the market, offer it to a guest, or use it to ease a child's altitude sickness, all without a second thought. But the world is changing. Suddenly, there's a demand from faraway cities, and it's not for a mild boost to carry potatoes up a mountain. No, it's for the white powder, refined, potent, and worth more per ounce than gold. Overnight, small coca plots become the foundation for a booming, shadowy empire. Farmers, squeezed by poverty and the whims of global commodity markets, face a simple math problem: grow corn and maybe pay the bills. Or grow coca and definitely pay the bills. For many, it's less a choice and more an act of survival. Enter the kingpins. In Colombia, men with names you'll one day see on Netflix rise to power. Escobar, Ochoa, Rodriguez. The narcos build mini-kingdoms with fleets of planes, submarines that look suspiciously like garden sheds, and accountants who could give Wall Street a run for its money. Smuggling becomes a science. Bribes are paid, borders are crossed, and product makes its way north in everything from dolls to dog food. If you've ever wondered who would hide a brick of cocaine in a shipment of bananas, the answer is someone who really, really wants a new mansion. But it's not all fast cars and gold-plated bathroom fixtures. The violence is relentless and surreal. Entire towns become battlegrounds. Cartels battle each other, fight the government, and enforce their own rules with a ruthlessness that makes medieval justice look polite. One day the village square is quiet. The next, it's front-page news for reasons nobody wants to talk about. If you're an average citizen, you learn to keep your head down, your mouth shut, and your fingers crossed that the trouble keeps moving past your door. Meanwhile, governments across the world are launching their own war. Helicopters hover over jungles. Agents with mirrored sunglasses pose for cameras, and entire mountainsides are sprayed with herbicides. Politicians declare Plan Colombia, or Plan Peru, or Plan Please Stop Asking About This in press conferences. The results are mixed. Coca production moves but doesn't vanish. Farmers adapt. Cartels relocate. The game of whack-a-mole continues. In the background, there are also the forgotten stories. Farmers who just want to survive. Communities torn between tradition and survival. And a plant that, in another world, would have just stayed a humble chew. It's a story of globalization gone wild, where your morning headlines are written in the clouds of the Andes, and your government's policies ripple all the way down the Amazon. So now, as you trace this global web, you realize the story of cocaine isn't just about what happens in clubs or courtrooms, but in quiet villages, contested jungles, and boardrooms on every continent. It's the saga of supply and demand, of ancient tradition versus modern temptation, and the ways the world gets tangled when one little leaf becomes everyone's problem and nobody's solution. Welcome to the era of Pablo Escobar, elaborate tunnels, and cash literally too bulky to fit in a mattress. It's less glamorous now. more explosions, fewer monocles. Let's drop you into Colombia in the 1980s, where the air is thick with humidity, suspense, and the distant thud of another cartel-funded party, or possibly another car bomb. You're in Medellin, a city that once dreamed of becoming the Athens of South America, now the headquarters of the most infamous criminal enterprise in modern history. Pablo Escobar is at the center of it all. Part Robin Hood, part villain, and all business. He doesn't just run the Medellin cartel, he practically runs the country. Politicians are bought, police are bribed, and those who can't be paid off are simply retired. In the most final way possible, cocaine isn't just a product anymore, it's an industry. Billions of dollars flow north, and with them comes a river of corruption, violence, and spectacle. Escobar himself becomes a legend. He builds soccer fields for kids, runs for office, and once even offers to pay off Colombia's national debt. Spoiler, the government is not impressed. At the same time, his rivals, like the Cali cartel, are vying for their slice of the action, turning Colombia into a high-stakes chessboard with armed helicopters for rooks and getaway boats for pawns. But beneath the pop culture mythology, daily life grows more surreal and more dangerous. Imagine opening your closet to find cash stuffed in plastic bags because banks won't take it and mattresses are already full. The volume is staggering. So much cash, in fact, that rats literally eat millions every year. Cartels dig elaborate tunnels under borders, engineer semi-submarines in secret jungle shipyards, and turn smuggling into a form of competitive art. If there's a world record for most creative hiding place, the cartels are always 2 steps ahead. For the average Colombian, it's a dizzying blend of fear, pride, and resignation. One day, Escobar pays for your cousin's new roof. The next, the local police station is rubble. Teachers warn kids to avoid strangers and to never talk about what they've seen at home. Plata o plomo, silver or lead, becomes a national slogan. Take the bribe or take a bullet. There's no middle ground, no safe distance. When the authorities push back, the cartels push harder. Judges and journalists become targets. Airplanes are bombed. Entire neighborhoods are evacuated for safety, only to be caught in the crossfire anyway. Internationally, the chaos sparks a global manhunt. The US sends agents, helicopters, and enough surveillance equipment to film a small sci-fi movie. Drug lords are profiled in glossy magazines and hunted by special task forces with more acronyms than an insurance policy. Escobar himself is chased across rooftops, his face on wanted posters everywhere, until his story finally ends in a bloody showdown on a Medellin rooftop. A modern-day Icarus, brought down not by hubris, but by wiretaps and helicopters. The aftermath isn't neat. With Escobar gone, the cartels don't disappear, they splinter, evolve, and, in some cases, get even more violent. New players emerge, new routes are carved, and the violence spreads to Mexico, Central America, and beyond. The war on drugs grows, but so does the ingenuity of those willing to risk everything for a shot at Escobar's mythical fortune. Meanwhile, for most people caught in the crossfire, life means navigating checkpoints, avoiding the wrong conversation, and hoping tonight is quiet. The wealth and power are real, but so are the funerals, the empty homes, the missing loved ones. There are no more monocles, just bulletproof glass and anxious glances over the shoulder. So as the dust settles, you realize this chapter of the cocaine story isn't about glamour. It's about chaos, resilience, and a dangerous game where the stakes are measured in dollars, lives, and the uncertain hope that one day the violence might finally lose interest and move on. Today, cocaine is less Studio 54 and more emergency room. Doctors, social workers, and weary parents everywhere are still picking up the pieces. let's step into the present day. The disco balls are long gone. The Wall Street party has moved to LinkedIn. And the bright optimism of a quick fix high has given way to a much less glamorous reality. You might expect cocaine's reputation to have faded into legend by now, but here it is, still lurking in the shadows, popping up in toxicology reports, and making regular appearances in stories that begin with, "You're not going to believe this." But in hospitals across the world, the legacy of cocaine is painfully clear. Emergency rooms see it all. Chest pain, heart attacks, strokes, even sudden, inexplicable nosebleeds in people who swear they've never touched the stuff. Doctors have learned to look for the telltale signs: a rapid pulse, a frantic energy, a patient who can't stop talking, or one who's crashing hard after days without sleep. It's not Studio 54 anymore, it's triage, telemetry, and a lot of paperwork. The faces have changed, but the story feels familiar. Cocaine is no longer just the drug of yuppies and nightclubs. It's mixed into all sorts of things. Sometimes cut with fentanyl, sometimes passed off as just a little party favor. Users range from teens experimenting at a house party to stressed-out professionals looking for a jolt, to people whose lives have unraveled in ways they never planned. The modern cocaine landscape is unpredictable, unregulated, and, thanks to the marvels of globalization, always a few steps ahead of the law. Social workers and counselors are on the front lines, facing down the same old cycle: addiction, treatment, relapse, recovery, repeat. For every dramatic news story, there are 100 quieter struggles. Parents lie awake at night, hoping their kids are safe. Communities rally to build harm reduction programs, only to find their funding cut in the next round of budget negotiations. Non-profits organize needle exchanges and outreach campaigns, trying to meet people where they are, whether that's a city park, a halfway house, or the emergency room. The science, at least, has caught up. Researchers now understand how cocaine hijacks the brain's reward system, why it leads to spirals of euphoria and emptiness, and how it amplifies the risks of everything from heart failure to mental health breakdowns. The days of calling it a harmless pick-me-up are long gone. Treatments have improved, but the stigma remains. Admitting to a cocaine problem is still harder than hiding one. And let's not forget the legal side. The penalties for cocaine possession are still uneven, especially in countries where the law hasn't caught up to reality. Some places push for decriminalization, recognizing that addiction is a medical problem, not a moral failing. Others stick to the old playbook: harsh sentences, no tolerance, and more people behind bars than ever. The debate rages on in city councils, in parliament, in late-night kitchen conversations. Is it better to punish, to prevent, to treat, or to just try to survive? The public health crisis isn't just about users. It's about families, neighborhoods, and the long tail of consequences that stretches back through decades of policy, panic, and profit. Cocaine might have started as a sacred leaf, traveled through centuries as medicine and mayhem, and burned bright in the glitzy lights of club culture. But now it's a crisis measured in ER visits and second chances. So today, if you ask a doctor, a parent, or a tired social worker about cocaine, you won't get a tale of adventure or glamour. You'll get a story about harm, healing, and the constant, exhausting hope that tomorrow's headline might finally be about something else. And maybe, just maybe, that's a sign we're getting closer to closing the book on this wild chapter. One hospital discharge at a time. Circle back to the Andes, where coca leaves are still chewed for tradition, medicine, and energy. The world may have changed, but for many, the leaf is still just a leaf. and the story isn't finished. Let's imagine you're walking a rocky trail thousands of feet above sea level, the kind of landscape where the air feels thin and every step reminds you just how high up you really are. You pass fields dotted with hardy crops, potatoes, quinoa, and woven quietly among them, the bright green of coca plants. Here, in the cool shadow of ancient mountains, the story of coca feels both timeless and newly urgent. In villages across Peru, Bolivia, and northern Argentina, you join the morning routine. A small handful of fresh coca leaves, plucked and chewed slowly, packed into the cheek. It's not a rush, not a high, but a gentle lift, like the world's most organic cup of coffee, minus the jitters and existential dread. You see grandmothers with weathered hands passing bundles of leaves to children, market sellers tucking a wad into their cheeks before setting up stalls, and farmers pausing in the fields to share a pouch with their neighbors. For these communities, coca is still sacred, a living tradition. It's part of offerings to the apis, the mountain spirits. It's shared in celebration and mourning, used to soothe stomachs and ease the sting of altitude. The flavor is earthy and slightly bitter, the sensation familiar and grounding. No one here is worried about the scandals that swirl half a world away. To chew coca is to join a chain stretching back thousands of years, a daily act that says, we are still here, still ourselves. But step back and you'll notice the world is watching. International headlines still lump coca together with cocaine, never quite pausing to separate the leaf from the powder. Global agencies urge eradication. Governments debate whether to criminalize, legalize, or simply ignore the whole mess. Meanwhile, villagers argue for their right to grow a plant that is older than any law and more resilient than any policy. The tension is everywhere. Helicopters sometimes buzz low, scanning for illicit fields, and men in uniforms arrive with charts and promises of alternative crops. But most of those alternatives don't stand up to the Andean climate or to centuries of cultural meaning. There are public protests, banners that read "Coca is not cocaine," and appeals to the United Nations. Sometimes it works. Bolivia, under leaders like Evo Morales, himself a former coca farmer, secures protections for traditional use, winning the right to keep chewing even as they agree to crack down on export for illicit markets. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is having second thoughts about the war on drugs. Researchers argue that the leaf's alkaloid content is mild, non-addictive, and, in traditional forms, no more dangerous than a cup of tea. Some adventurous tourists try coca tea to ward off altitude sickness, and a new generation of chefs experiments with coca in everything from bread to desserts. Just don't try to bring any home through customs. For the people of the Andes, life with coca remains stubbornly ordinary. Kids walk to school with lunch and a few leaves in their pockets. Festivals always include a bowl of leaves for sharing. The plant is a thread tying together past and present, a small act of resistance against a world that likes to turn everything simple into a crisis. So, as you watch the clouds drift over the ancient peaks, you realize this story isn't about endings. The world may keep changing, laws may come and go, but in the high Andes, coca is still just a leaf, chewed for strength, for luck, for history, and for the quiet joy of surviving another sunrise. And if history has deeplands taught us anything, it's that the leaf and the people who cherish it aren't going anywhere. The last word on coca hasn't been written yet, and maybe it never will. It's the early 1900s and you've just chipped a tooth on a suspiciously hard breadstick. No worries. Your dentist has the solution. A generous squirt of pharmaceutical-grade cocaine right into your aching gums. Numbness, euphoria, and an overwhelming urge to compliment the wallpaper all kick in at once. Dentistry has never felt so exciting, and the aftercare instructions are basically try not to chew through your own face. Let's take a seat in that era's dental chair, an upright wooden contraption more likely to give you splinters than comfort. The dentist is all business. Starched coat, bristling mustache, and a tendency to treat your mouth like an excavation site. There's no gentle banter about your weekend plans, just a cheery open wide, and the glint of a steel syringe. In goes the cocaine, and almost immediately, your jaw goes blissfully numb. The pain vanishes. In its place, there's a light, floaty sensation and the fleeting, irrational confidence that you could probably do your own root canal if handed the right set of pliers. You may find yourself humming along with the waiting room phonograph, or waxing poetic about the ceiling tiles. Even the drill, hand-cranked, loud and more terrifying than a tax audit, feels almost manageable. You're practically eager for the procedure to begin, if only to prolong this strange, pleasant detachment from reality. But the wonders of cocaine in the dentist's toolkit don't stop there. This is the golden age of local anesthesia. For the first time, people can have teeth pulled, abscesses drained, and cavities filled without resorting to whiskey, biting a bullet, or politely fainting. Dentists everywhere are celebrating. Some write enthusiastic articles in medical journals. Others just give extra big discounts for referrals. Of course, moderation is not yet a thing. Why stop at one squirt when 3 works faster? Why settle for numb gums when you can have an entire numb face? Instructions are cheerful and vague. Apply until symptoms subside, or until the patient can no longer pronounce their own name. It's not uncommon to leave the office with a slightly tingly tongue, lips that feel 3 sizes too large, and the uncanny urge to tell the streetcar conductor he's doing a great job. Meanwhile, the pharmaceutical companies are thrilled. Advertisements promise painless procedures for young and old, a cure for dental fear, and modern science's greatest gift to the nervous patient. If your kid is anxious about their first filling, don't worry. The solution is just a child-sized dose away. Somehow, this doesn't make it into the modern parenting handbooks. As the years go on, dentists get creative. Cocaine is mixed into lozenges for sore throats, ointments for canker sores, and even tonics for general mouth malaise, which, if you've ever seen a 1905 dental hygiene cartoon, is apparently rampant. It's the era of fearless dental innovation. If it's numb, it's working. But as with all things, the honeymoon phase ends. Reports begin to circulate about strange habits, jittery patients, and occasional accidental gnawing of one's own cheek. A few unfortunate souls discover that a numb mouth is also an excellent way to accidentally swallow a crown, a bridge, or half a set of temporary braces. Dentists notice some regulars returning a little too often for routine cleanings. Medical authorities finally step in, suggesting perhaps it's time to rethink the use of full-strength stimulants as an everyday dental treat. By the 1920s, the profession pivots, slowly, reluctantly, towards safer alternatives. Novocaine arrives, less glamorous but also less likely to inspire impromptu dental poetry or lifelong chewing gum regrets. Cocaine, once the pride of the dental cabinet, quietly returns to the realm of medical oddity and histories. What were we thinking? Files. So next time you grip the armrests in a modern dentist chair, comfort yourself with this thought. No matter how weird things get, at least your dentist won't offer you a pick-me-up that leaves you complimenting the wallpaper, planning your next novel, and wondering how you managed to floss your tongue. The age of dangerous dentistry is over, or at least mostly numb. Picture yourself strolling into a cozy corner pharmacy circa 1895. You're here for cough syrup, but you leave with a bag full of mysterious powders, a tin of cocaine lozenges, and a collectible postcard advertising the restorative powers of pure Peruvian joy. The druggist smiles with all the sincerity of a man who's just sold you a ticket to both euphoria and a sleepless week. Let's take a deep breath through your freshly numbed nostrils and soak in the ambience. The shelves stretch from floor to creaky ceiling, each lined with bottles, tins, and glass jars labeled with names that swing between scientific and suspicious. Dr. Marvel's Panacea, Mrs. Butterfield's Invigorating Drops, Professor Quibble's Marvelous Nerve Tonic. The labels promise everything: relief from coughs, chills, heartbreak, and existential dread. The pharmacist, equal parts chemist, bartender, and local gossip, stands ready behind the counter, sleeves rolled up and mortar and pestle at the ready. You mention your sore throat. He nods, plucks a tin of cocaine lozenges for hoarse voices from the shelf, and adds a bottle of cough syrup with an ingredient list that reads like a dare. Anything for the nerves? You ask, almost as a joke. He slides a tiny envelope of white powder across the counter and winks. For when you really need to pull an all-nighter, or say, an all-weeker. While you're here, why not check the postcard rack? You pick one up, a cheerful cartoon of a plump pharmacist in a bowler hat, holding a coca leaf the size of a dinner plate. Underneath, a slogan: sleep less, live more. You wonder if anyone's ever mailed one of these to their mother-in-law as a subtle hint. Back in the day, pharmacies were community hubs, the place to pick up medicine, exchange gossip, and acquire whatever miracle you needed to power through the week. There's a tin for every ailment. Cocaine lozenges for fatigue, melancholy, or persistent shyness. Kids get their own formulas in cheerful tins with happy squirrels and promises of soothing, speedy recovery. Even your family dog can score a bottle of pet perk-up elixir, guaranteed to make bath time both efficient and extremely energetic. You watch customers come and go. A factory worker grabbing energy powder before the night shift. A teacher asking for a tonic to keep her wits sharp through 22 unruly children. An insomniac poet quietly sliding a few coins across the counter for inspiration. Nobody asks too many questions, and the pharmacist certainly isn't offering any warnings about dependency or side effects. Why spoil the mood? If you start seeing shadowy raccoons in broad daylight, you can always try Dr. Marvel's calming syrup, also conveniently available here. The salesmanship is unmatched. The pharmacist hands you a sample tin just in case and assures you that if you send a postcard to a friend, they'll get a coupon for half off their next purchase. Who needs loyalty cards when you have literal correspondence fueled by enthusiasm and mild stimulants? Meanwhile, advertisements for these products spread across newspapers, magazine pages, and billboards. Pure Peruvian cocaine. Safe for all ages. Lozenges for poets, orators, and talkative dinner guests. Some include glowing endorsements from noted scientists or local dignitaries, though the fine print is hard to read when your hands won't stop shaking. The result? The world is buzzing, sometimes literally. Sleep schedules are ruined. Family game night is now family jitterbug night. People get more done, talk more, and write postcards at a record-setting pace. The only real risk is running out of stamps or accidentally mailing your grocery list to the mayor. Eventually, the party winds down. Laws change, science catches up, and the golden age of over-the-counter mayhem comes to an end. The pharmacist trades his mortar and pestle for a cash register and a whole new set of regulations. But for a brief, sparkling moment, you could walk into any pharmacy, pick up a tin of restorative joy, and step out into the world, ready to conquer the weak, and, possibly, the next 3 nights without sleep. You're a shell-shocked soldier in World War I, and your kit now includes wool socks, beef jerky, and, you guessed it, a ration of pharmaceutical cocaine for alertness. Fast forward to World War II, armies, pilots, and even spies are issued stimulants to keep them awake. The result? Half the world's fighting force is wide-eyed, restless, and ready to invent the energy drink 70 years too early. Let's set you down in a muddy trench in France. 1917. It's cold, it's damp, and you've already lost the feeling in your toes. You're more likely to get trench foot than a hot meal. And the biggest threat, besides artillery, mustard gas, and the world's least welcoming rats, is simply staying awake. Enter your new best friend. A tiny vial of cocaine tablets, passed out by the cheerful, exhausted medic, who claims they'll put some pep in your step and a smile in your mud-stained mustache. You pop one, and the world sharpens. You're awake, almost too awake. The bombs don't seem quite as loud, and suddenly, cleaning your rifle feels like the most urgent and interesting task you've ever been given. The orders are simple. Stay alert, stay alive, and, if you're lucky, write a letter home without accidentally proposing marriage to the family dog. Your letters home are increasingly enthusiastic, if not always coherent. Dearest mother, morale is high, the food is present, and I have single-handedly reorganized the entire dugout alphabetically. By World War II, things get even wilder. Scientists and strategists, ever eager for a leg up, have taken note. Stimulants work. The British and Americans issue benzodrine pills. The Germans distribute Pervitin, methamphetamine. And yes, in some units, cocaine is still on the menu, especially for commandos and long-range pilots. The logic is as simple as wartime logic ever is. Better to have a soldier who's too chatty than one who's too sleepy. As a pilot, you're handed a little packet before a night mission. The instructions are short. For fatigue, chew. Soon you're scanning the horizon, eyes wide as dinner plates, feeling ready to race the sun if it dares to rise before you land. The conversations in the barracks are lightning fast. The card games get louder, the jokes get weirder, and the only thing more jittery than the troops are the field telegraphs. And it isn't just the front lines. Spies and saboteurs get their own stimulant cocktails, sometimes mixed with a dash of something calming to keep them steady. Secret agents carry tiny tins disguised as breath mints, perfect for infiltrating a Nazi ball and then staying up all night to steal the guest list. If you thought James Bond was suave, just imagine him after his 3rd ration of wartime pep pills. On the home front, pharmacists and doctors are swamped with requests for alertness pills, anything to help the factory workers keep up with double shifts or the nurses power through the midnight rush. Advertisements in wartime magazines hint at scientific advances for productivity and stamina, though the fine print gets smaller as the ingredients get stronger. But as with all miracle cures, the hangover is real. Soldiers come home, and some find themselves unable to sleep for days, plagued by nerves, exhaustion, and the gnawing urge to reorganize their sock drawers by color, date of issue, and emotional significance. The medical establishment, at last, starts to question whether a nation that can't stop talking might be a nation in need of a nap. So, as the world rebuilds, stimulant use quietly recedes into the shadows. At least, until the next time someone decides that sleeplessness is a strategic advantage. For now, you hang up your uniform, stash away the half-empty vial, and marvel at the reality. Before energy drinks, before late-night coffee, the world's biggest battles were sometimes won, or at least survived, on a few milligrams of pharmaceutical chaos. And, if you're lucky, a good night's sleep at last. And so, as the last echoes of this story fade like a jittery Victorian pharmacist at the end of a long shift, let's take a deep breath, preferably through the nose. No numbing agents required, and reflect on this tangled, unpredictable journey. From sacred Andean rituals to Victorian medicine cabinets, from the raucous dance floors of disco-era New York to the quietly humming machinery of a modern hospital, cocaine's history is, well, a little bit wild, a lot absurd, and occasionally just flat-out bonkers. Tonight, you've survived 1,000 years' worth of questionable choices, accidental inventions, and more medical optimism than a late-night infomercial. You've chewed sacred leaves with Inca priests, endured the over-caffeinated brainstorms of Sigmund Freud, watched Wall Street yuppies sprint through paperwork at the speed of sound, and quietly observed as modern medicine locked the cabinet and hid the key. All without losing a single tooth or waking up with your mustache frozen in a beaker of nerve tonic. It's easy, from the safety of your pillow fort, to laugh at the chaos and calamity that followed this little green plant as it wound its way through history. But there's also something quietly miraculous about humanity's relentless drive to tinker, explore, and occasionally get it spectacularly, hilariously wrong. The story of cocaine is a story of hope, desperation, resilience, and, above all, the absolute refusal of humans to read the fine print. So tonight, as you settle into the soft glow of modern comforts, clean water, real medicine, and a bedtime that doesn't require a prescription, maybe send a silent thank you to the inventors, the healers, and even the accidental troublemakers who brought us here. They may have missed a few warning signs along the way, but they paved the road so we could sleep soundly, safe from snake oil, patent medicine, and late-night dental adventures. History may be messy, baffling, and sometimes absolutely ridiculous, but it's also proof that people, no matter the era, are stubborn, hopeful, and more than a little bit entertaining. Sleep well, knowing you made it through another tale of human resilience and historical mischief. And remember, the best part about history is that you can always wake up tomorrow and enjoy it with a clear head. Good night.